Hello, I'm Andrew Pritchard, and thank you for watching today's Northeast Regional Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. So, look at the last 72 hours of precipitation across the entire lower 48. We saw a couple of things here over the last few days. One was Barry making its way up from the lower Mississippi Valley into parts of the Mid-South before hooking off to the east through parts of the eastern Corn Belt and eventually parts of the Northeast region. We've also watched this area be continually active with the regeneration of thunderstorm clusters each afternoon as we deal with kind of the flow over the top of the ridge here over the cross of parts of the Dakotas and the upper Midwest. So you look at the hazards map from the National Weather Service here on Friday morning, a big chunk of not just the central U.S., but also the eastern U.S. dealing with excessive heat warnings. That's the pink shading that you see there. Heat advisories in orange, which surround there as we deal with a very hot and muggy air mass. Afternoon highs in the mid-90s, dew points in the mid-70s, so it feels tropical out there with heat indices each afternoon between 100 and 115 degrees. So just a really oppressive, hot and steamy air mass over the eastern two-thirds of the United States. Now, the reason for that is this broad ridging that we're seeing over the eastern two-thirds of the country here, allowing that heat to kind of build within that. But as we go through the next few days, we're going to be watching for some change in the form of shifting that ridge off to the west, which allows heat to build over the western U.S., but brings in cooler and drier air to the eastern two-thirds of the country. So some relief is on the way as we get into late this weekend into early next week. And we'll talk about what that looks like going through this forecast. Now, the next 5 days, we're going to keep the warmth in the region here across the Northeast, keeping unseasonably warm conditions in here. In the central U.S., you're seeing kind of a mix between the hot air mass we've got now and the cooler air mass that follows in the next 48 to 72 hours as we shift the ridge off to the west. But the pattern becomes really clear as we look at the last few days of July here, keeping the ridging over towards the west, keeping the heat building in that area, bringing cooler air mass into the eastern two-thirds of the United States here between July 25th and 29th. Looking at the precipitation forecast now, keeping it mostly near average across the Northeast region here for the next 5 days. We will see thunderstorms increase as a front moves through the region over the back half of the weekend. We'll be quiet for much of the early part of next week, but then across kind of the northern tier here from the upper Midwest through the Great Lakes into the Northeast region, keeping things near average or slightly above average with precipitation chances as we head into the last few days of July. As the jet stream loses some of the amplitude, not so much like that. Still seeing broad ridging over the western U.S. We've got a low agreement here, but it's keeping kind of somewhat northwest flow across the Dakotas into the Northeast region here with little disturbances traveling along that, more zonal flow with little disturbances traveling along it. So keeping temperatures closer to average and then bringing in intermittent chances for rain and thunderstorms. We'll look at the high-resolution NAM model, though, just taking us through the first part of the weekend all the way through Sunday morning, and this is where we can see isolated thunderstorms possible during the first half of the weekend, but then as the frontal boundary begins to sink into the area here late Saturday into Sunday, seeing more widespread thunderstorm chances. We'll go ahead and we'll just play this one more time, getting us through the day Friday now. And then into Saturday, this is what you'll see here, thunderstorm activity flaring up here, especially across western and northern portions of the Northeast region here as that front begins to move in. This would be 10 p.m. Saturday, getting more widespread thunderstorm activity into parts of Pennsylvania and New York, and also some spotty thunderstorm activity possible across parts of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont during the day Saturday. On Sunday, that air mass is going to continue to sink off to the south. We'll see widespread thunderstorms developing across a big chunk of the Northeast region Sunday afternoon. We'll look at the precipitation accumulation forecast that accompanies this. As we get through 2 p.m. Sunday, far south and eastern regions not picking up on the precipitation yet. That will follow. So these regions getting their chance for showers and storms Sunday afternoon and evening into the day on Monday. But just generally kind of watching not just the warmer and humid air mass sink to the south, but those thunderstorm chances doing the same thing as we head through the weekend. Here's the temperature forecast from the high-resolution NAM model, and this is where, again, we can see the heat building across the central U.S. into the Northeast region each and every afternoon here, but with that frontal boundary slowly bringing a relief here. We'll play it one more time. It's most dramatic here in the Midwest as we go through the weekend. We'll see the relief here coming late in the weekend into early next week in the Northeast region, but there's that front each day sinking a little bit further south, bringing a cooler and drier air mass into the region. Now, the European long-range model will take a look at the flow of the jet stream here, starting off Friday with this broad ridge across the eastern two-thirds of the country. That is responsible for the very hot air mass we've got right now, the hot and humid air mass. Let's go ahead and bring things back, though, and go through the transition over the weekend. So now we're into Saturday and Sunday, Monday, And by the time we get to Tuesday, seeing a dramatic change in the jet stream now, seeing this ridge off to the west, allowing heat to build in this region. I should kind of redraw this, I think, something more like this. Heat building into the west, cooler, less humid air building into the eastern two-thirds of the country with this broader trough over the northeast. What happens then? We can watch this. We can see the frontal boundary kind of sinking southward. So as we head through the first part of the weekend, here we go on Saturday afternoon, seeing thunderstorms flaring up along the frontal boundary from the Great Lakes into the northeast region. I'll go through the day on Sunday now, seeing that front sink a little bit further south, seeing thunderstorm chances across the entire northeast region Sunday afternoon and evening. By the time we get to Monday, now the front becoming more defined in the northeast, pushing off to the south. So it's Sunday and Monday with the best thunderstorm chances across the northeast region. By the time we get to Tuesday, this front has cleared the region now, so thunderstorm activity pushing off into the southern region. We're drier now across the northeast region to start off the work week. Going through the day Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, still staying mostly dry here. Opportunities for widely isolated showers and storms towards the back half of the weekend, but really it's going to be Sunday and Monday the biggest chance for precipitation as we look out across the northeast region for the next 7 to 10 days, with this front moving through the region again Sunday, Monday, seeing thunderstorms along that frontal boundary, but then behind that, a much different air mass and one that's going to be a little bit less supportive of daily showers and thunderstorms. The total accumulated forecast here from the European weather model. And I just want to point out, you're going to watch the precipitation activity kind of sinking southward with time with this loop. You're going to see us accumulate some good precipitation here, between 1 inch and 3 inches across the northeast region. As this loop begins, let's just show you. Here you go. That is Sunday and Monday right there that just blanketed the northeast region. Then as this loop plays, you notice that you don't see additional accumulation on there. And that, again, is because it looks like Sunday and Monday, plenty chances of scattered showers and storms. But then as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, and beyond, really bringing the rain to an end across the northeast region for at least the next 4 to 5 days. The temperature anomalies here, we can watch this air mass kind of shift off to the south as we play this out. We'll bring it back. Starting off on Friday, this hot, humid air mass across the eastern two-thirds of the country. And we take this out into Saturday now. And then Sunday, still seeing the heat fully in effect here across the northeast region, even though we're seeing some relief now making its way through parts of the Corn Belt. So we get into Monday now, and then especially Tuesday. That's when we feel the big relief here in the form of a cooler and less humid air mass across the northeast region. Wednesday, that air mass holding on. Thursday, still a bit cooler, but by the time we get to Friday, starting to kind of sneak some warmth back in as, again, this ridge kind of flattens out. The flow flattens out a little bit, kind of bringing a more zonal flow across the lower 48. And that's going to kick us back to a more typical pattern. We're not dealing with any heat extremes, no cold extremes, but more of a typical, just typical hot, humid air mass with daily chances for thunderstorms as we get into the end of next week. One more way of visualizing this, we'll look at the precipitable water forecast. This is a way of visualizing the moisture content within the air mass here. And again, you see this very muggy air mass across the entire, really, the two-thirds of the country. As we play this loop, you'll see the drier air come plunging in from the north, but then that transition back to a more typical pattern at the end of the loop. So here we go. We'll bring it back. We're going through the weekend now, keeping this very, hot, humid air mass over the eastern two-thirds of the country. But then here comes relief Sunday and Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. You see that front sinking well off to the south. We're much cooler and drier across the Corn Belt into the northeast region. But then as we get to the end of this loop, you're starting to see some of this humidity return, sneaking up first from the high plains, but then again riding that flow into parts of the Great Lakes and eventually back into the northeast region. So by the time we get to next weekend, probably a bit more like what you'd expect here in late July, early August. The high temperature forecast here just for the next few days to finish us out. Let's go ahead. We will click through time with this one. Let's go back one more time here. You can watch this air mass sink off to the south. Here we go. Friday, high temperatures here in the lower 90s across the northeast region. A bit warmer here. The peak of the heat here Saturday and Sunday. High temperatures in the mid to upper 90s. Those dew points in the mid to upper 70s. It's going to feel just oppressive out there Saturday and Sunday. Relief comes in on Monday. High temperatures in the mid to upper 70s across a big chunk of the region. Same thing Tuesday. Wednesday, we start warming back up, and then as we get into the end of next week, again, not dealing with any extreme heat, but then we're also not looking at this cooler pattern really lingering more than a few days either, flipping back to a more typical air mass here with daily high temperatures in the mid-80s. As always, Eric Snodgrass will be back with your an outlook on the next 1 to 2 weeks on Monday morning in our ag forecast video, and I'll have your next Northeast regional forecast for you midday on Tuesday. Have a great day and a wonderful weekend.